Inside the One Piece community, a lot of people do love to point out the fact that Zoro may be a little bit lackluster when it comes to his character, and in my opinion I do see where they're coming from, and so it leads me to make this video. Before anybody gets upset and goes down to the comment section, please listen to the full video and understand where I'm coming from when I'm talking about Zoro's character, as I do believe that Zoro is probably one of the more better written characters inside the story. Although it isn't really his main focal point, I do believe that a lot of people just underrate his writing in general, so I do want to shine some light on that. But more importantly, I do want to shine a light on what he could do to be a way better character. So strap in, because I'm going to get real in depth with this video. But before I get into the video, if you guys enjoy content like this, you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe, because I'm pretty frequent with my videos, and to be honest, it's a win-win. That's your support and I'll give you guys more videos like this in the near future. Whether it's One Piece, other anime, or just fiction in general, in due time I plan on covering it, so be there when I go there. But that's enough of my rambling. When I get into the video and truly find out why Zoro's character is so lackluster. Now, if you watched my agenda piece video, you would know how I'm going to approach this video, but if you haven't, then I'm going to approach it in a way where I want us to start a discussion. I'm going to make a lot of points, and you're going to need to wait until the end so you can really understand where I'm coming from. Know that, as I said in the beginning, I'm not attacking Zoro, as I do believe that Zoro is a very good character, but I do believe that there are certain things that Oda can do to make him better. But with those cautions out of the way, why don't I get straight into the video. At the beginning of the video, I want to call out Zoro's biggest problem, and that is his opponents. A lot of people may think that his opponents are cool and whatnot, but in my opinion, I feel like his opponents could do a lot more for him, and I'm gonna explain why. Whenever Zoro fights, it mainly hones on him being the number 2 with the Straw Hats, and then just him getting stronger. And in my opinion, I believe it should be a lot more than just that. I believe that Zoro should be focusing on his ideology as a swordsman, and we can see him grow and mature as he fights. Now, whether he does this during his light novel, I have no idea, since I haven't read it, and if it does happen, then obviously you can tell me in the comments section, but I believe it should be in the main story, as he is a main character. Another argument you could make is him being mature after his defeat to Mihawk, and then just him being trained by Mihawk. Now, that is one way you could look at it, but I believe that that just isn't as rewarding as him going around fighting many swordsmen, and then when he comes to fight Mihawk in the end, not only are they as strong as each other, but it's like they can have like an ideology war, like they can actually sit there and just talk about swordsmanship and just see whose version of swordsmanship is better. As I said before, his opponents focus on his strength and then him being the second commander of the Straw Hats. It doesn't really focus on his ideology as a swordsman. You could say that they do sometimes, but not always. It's just through strength. I want to see how they combat him. I want to see their ideologies, like King for instance. Over the past couple of weeks, I have really sat down and actually started to hate King the more I go back and reread Wano. I truly do believe that King should have been a lot more than just Lunarian man, and I'm put into the story so I can then feed you guys lore about Lunarians. And even at his job of being a lore dump, I mean, he wasn't really that great. I mean, we got a little bit of information, but it wasn't as grandiose as the other lore dumps we got for other people, like the Giants for instance. Now, mainly talking about their first appearance with Dory and Brogy. And then when you look at King, you're like, okay, right, so what are we doing here exactly? For instance, Oda could have dropped something about King being a part of the warrior clan or class inside of Lunarians. He could have done so many different things. I feel like overall, King just doesn't feel like the antagonist Zoro should have had during Wano, and especially when you have Sanji having Queen and Luffy having Kaido, they are amazing antagonists for both of them, and I dare say they're basically their best ones so far. As an antagonist to Luffy, as I've said multiple times on the channel, I do believe that Kaido is his best antagonist, and then when you look at Queen and Sanji, I mean, look, that is one of Sanji's greatest antagonists. So when you look at this, and then when you look at Zoro, and it's like, King was good, don't get me wrong, he was okay, but he wasn't what he should have been, because if he was what he should have been, we could have seen Zoro's character take that next step. And if King was compelling and brought that to the table, we could then see, okay, how does Zoro's swordsmanship and ideologies match up against the Lunarians? We could have seen that, and then we could have gone a lot more other things with his other opponents. I could rant on about King, but I'm going to switch it to Pika, because Pika is somebody that everybody just looks over when it comes to Zoro's opponents, but he's somebody that we need to have a chat about. When you look at Pika, right, Pika feels like what Shanks fans think Shanks is. He's a guy with a sword. He isn't, I don't see him as a swordsman. He's just a guy that happens to have a sword. That's different from Shanks. Shanks is a swordsman. But that is also another problem inside of One Piece. He just feels like somebody with a sword, and he didn't really, I mean, he showed us what Mihawk was showing Zoro during the post time skip, or just in between it, but he didn't really give us that push for Zoro's character. Now, obviously, you don't have to give Zoro a push in his character during that arc, but it would have been nice for it to be that. In all honesty, I feel like Pika should have had a hammer. I don't know why, he just feels like somebody that should have had a hammer, not a sword. So while I'm on this topic of Pika feeling like a guy with a sword, why don't I go into the whole swordsmanship thing inside of One Piece, because I feel like this is a massive thing that Oda does need to address at some point. Swordsmen inside of One Piece feel a little bit weird, as a lot of people do like to say, oh, he's just a guy with a sword because they're not stated to be a swordsman, or they don't have a swordsman code, or there's just something about the character that doesn't say, oh yes, I'm a swordsman. But a lot of people do wield swords and can use swords. Like for instance, Kuzan and Kizaru use swords, right? But are they viewed as swordsmen, or are they just people that like to use swords? In my eyes, they're just people that like to use swords. They're not really swordsmen, since that's not their main ability. They just can create a sword, so they'll use it here and there. They may even create other weapons to help them in battle. But then you have characters like Rayleigh, Shanks and Roger, who are definitely swordsmen, since their sword is their main way of combat and they've learned swordsmanship. Then you have odd cases like Big Mom. Is she a swordsman? Well, I mean, she should be. She uses her sword all the time. So it's like, what makes a swordsman inside of One Piece? And the massive thing that we're missing here is their ideology. Since people's ideologies on swordsmanship isn't really explained and just delved into too much in One Piece, we don't actually get to see who's a swordsman and who isn't. And the reason I can complain about this is because Oda literally edited one of the best swordsman manga to ever exist. Why are we acting like Oda doesn't know what he's doing in this department? I feel like he just forgets about it, or maybe he just neglects it, or maybe he's just gonna focus on it sometime soon. But listen, he's cutting it thin now, because there are a lot of characters that have been introduced into the story or just have been and gone that we don't really get to see their full ideologies on swordsmanship. And dare I say, Sanji's ideals as a chef has been focused way more than Zoro's ideals as a swordsman. And when I say ideals, I feel like a lot of people are going to misinterpret what I'm saying. Like, I want to see two introspective views on swordsmanship clashing every time Zoro fights. Okay, now maybe every time is a bit of a stretch, but I want to see it often with his character, so we get to see how two people's ideals clash and see which one's better. As I said before, it's usually, oh, I'm the second in command of the Straw Hats. Oh, okay, I'm the second in command of this evil crew. Okay, cool, now we're gonna clash, and that is how our ideals and everything are gonna clash, and we're gonna see which one comes out on top. And then the swordsman part is just thrown in there, and it's just in the background. If you compare him to Sanji, and I'm gonna keep comparing Zoro to Sanji, because if both of them are main characters that are there at the forefront, I expect Zoro to be getting the exact same treatment writing wise as Sanji does. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want any less for Zoro. If you look at all of Sanji's fights and look at all of Zoro's fights, and you look at all the writing behind Sanji's fights and then look at Zoro's fights, yeah, they're like, Sanji's, like, every single time Sanji fights, it's like an aspect of his character comes out and it's fleshed out. Like against Bon Clay, we get to see how he can get around his weakness for women, and how obviously he has to time it right with Bon Clay, and how Bon Clay uses that to his disadvantage. Against Queen, we get to see it with his family. And then when you then look at Zoro's opponents, it's like, I mean, it is there, but is it as potent as Sanji's? No. And as every soul knows, I'm a Sanji fan, but I still want to see Zoro winning, because I feel like if Zoro's fights were more like introspective and we get to see obviously two people's ideals clash, I think I would prefer it a lot more. Now obviously, yes, two people's ideals do clash whenever Zoro does fight, but it's not on his swordsmanship, and I feel like his swordsmanship needs to be like at the forefront a lot more. It's there, but it's more, oh, I want to become the world's greatest swordsman, yeah, through strength, but I want to also see your mind progress as well. And remember, I'm coming from a writing standpoint, I'm not coming from a strength standpoint, because obviously we know that every single time he fights, the strength aspect behind him becoming the world's strongest swordsman is there. But when Zoro talks about he wants his name to be up there in the skies, and I see Mihawk, me personally, I view Mihawk as somebody that is very deep inside their character. When I see Mihawk appear next, or when I see Mihawk obviously fight Zoro, I expect a lot from Mihawk. I see Mihawk as somebody that's wise. That's just how I see Mihawk. I don't know why, but I see him as a wise character. So when I see Zoro fight him in the end, I want them to have a clash of ideals, and that is why I want Zoro to build up to that point where he's been around, he's fought all these different swordsmen, and so he can see it from every angle, and so Mihawk can be like, okay, I've seen you've grown in strength, but not only in strength, you've grown in your mind. And you can't say Oda can't do this for Zoro, because he does it with Luffy. Think about his fight against Kaido, think about his fight against Katakuri, think about his fight against Enel, think about his fight against all these different people. In some way, the introspective ideals are clashing, and you get to see it from both of the characters, especially with Katakuri. And okay, Katakuri, you could say, is Luffy's best fight. I mean, in my opinion, I feel like Kaido was better, but you could say that Katakuri versus Luffy is the best fight in the entire series. And why is that? Because we get to see the introspective ideals clash. And that is what I want to see from Zoro. And that is why I feel like if Oda doesn't start implementing it in Zoro's character now, when truly it is too late, I feel like his fight against Mihawk, in my opinion, isn't going to be as great as a lot of people expect it to be. On the fighting standpoint, yeah, I think it will be great, but on just the overall fight and just the writing behind it, I don't know. In my eyes, it just comes down to Oda's execution when it comes down to swordsmanship. For instance, the best sort of statement surrounding swordsmanship inside the whole series and whatnot is from Law. And that Law moment was really good. Why it couldn't have been given to Zoro, I don't know, but I mean, look, Law gave it to us, and genuinely that is probably one of the better moments inside the series. I like that moment a lot with Tashigi. So it's not like Oda can't do it. He can definitely do it. It's in his bag. I mean, he works on Ronin Kenshin, so it's there, but I feel like he can't dip into it as much since he's trying to focus on the full story, and I get that, but at the exact same time, when you do get the opportunities to, you can do it. And swordsmanship is huge inside of One Piece. Another thing as well is that we have Black Blades to also think about. What if your ideology or whatnot could lead you to unlocking a black blade a lot quicker than other people? Stuff like that is what feeds into obviously what I'm trying to say, but I do know that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but Oda does do a lot of things. Okay, I get it. But you need to understand that there are a lot of things that he could do better. Now, I'm not saying that he's doing it terribly. I'm just saying that obviously his execution could be a lot better. Because as I've said about 3 times now, he has worked on one of the best manga that involves swordsmanship. And I do know that the author is if not a little bit, he is a big, lock that guy up. In fact, no, don't even lock him up. Finish him. Yeah, since I've rambled on so much about obviously how he can execute and whatnot, I'm gonna actually sit here and explain to you guys what Oda could do in the future to massively improve Zoro's character when it comes to swordsmanship and just make him jump up leagues, so when he fights Mihawk it feels satisfying. So right now we're in Elbaf, and I don't have the leaks for what's gonna happen this week, so I don't know, maybe something magical could happen this week. I doubt it, but I think Oda needs to take a step back, or not take a step back. I think Oda needs to just straight up include something about the giants being swordsmen, or just have like a swordsman class inside the giants, and we get to see Zoro interact with them and just learn something from them. One thing about Zoro is that he's always willing to learn. I mean, we saw this with Kinemon where he took his Firefox style, so something like that, just seeing how they operate would be very nice. And when we move past it, we're obviously going to get into Zoro versus Shiryu. I mean, there could be a fight in between, but I doubt it. So we're gonna have Zoro versus Shiryu. Now, me personally, I believe that this fight could do wonders for Zoro, especially in the ideals department, as they're very opposite with how they approach their fights. Shiryu's very conniving, scathing, nasty. Like he's a sneak merchant. Like we know how he is. And Zoro is quite literally the opposite. He'll rush straight at you and wants to fight you head on. So seeing them battle each other will be very interesting, but one thing I want Oda to do is I want them to have a little bit of dialogue in there, and so we get to see the ideologies as a whole just clash. You could easily get comments out of Zoro that's like, a true swordsman doesn't hide in the dark and whatnot, and then Shiryu can make a remark back to him. Stuff like that could make their fight very interesting, and we could then see their ideals just clash right there. And through their fight, Zoro can obviously learn future sight and whatnot, and then we can also then just see how his ideals grow from that fight and see in a different perspective on swordsmanship. Maybe sometimes it is smart to just straight up sneak your opponent, or he'll just stick to his guns and appear right there and then and tell them, yeah, let's fight. Stuff like that could deepen his bag, so when he fights Mihawk it feels way more rewarding, and so he can then get another perspective on how swordsmanship works. Then his fight with Mihawk, well, his fight with Mihawk could be many different things. It could either be a complete Zoro fighting Mihawk and we just then get a straight winner of ideals and just a battle of their overall strength, or it could be a Zoro that still needs a little bit of a push and then he gets over Mihawk during that fight. Personally, the latter is more exciting to me, as I would love to see Zoro grow during that fight with Mihawk, so he's just not already there on Mihawk's level. He's there, but his brain and still obviously his strength needs to grow a little bit, so then when he does beat Mihawk, it just feels way more rewarding. In swordsmanship, your mind and body being strong is something that is very key, and so as I just said, it will feel extremely rewarding if Zoro is there at the end and he's like, yes, I'm both strong in the mind but also the body as well, and it's like Mihawk really can't say anything. It's not me because they're like, oh, I'm wiser than you. No, Zoro is now wiser than Mihawk, or is just as wise as Mihawk, and he's also stronger than Mihawk. And even as I'm talking right now, when I talk about people being wise, Mihawk, as I said, I do view him as somebody that's wise, and so you could say that's another reason why he is the world's strongest swordsman, why he has a black blade, and that's why Shanks doesn't. Stuff like this is things that Oda can just delve into and just make the bag of just swordsmen inside of One Piece way deeper and just stronger. So with that being said, why don't I wrap up the video? Zoro himself isn't bad, it's more the opponents he goes up against and them not just giving him that boost inside of his ideology aspects as a swordsmanship that I believe he should get. To then follow up on that, we obviously have the overall aspects of swordsmanship inside of One Piece, and that just needs to be improved overall. It should have been improved a lot earlier inside the story, but as we know, Oda has a lot of things to balance between, and it took a back seat naturally. And so what you can do to improve it is pretty simple. Just focus on it a little bit more, make sure the explanation around black blades does involve a little bit of ideology and just idealism just behind it, since it will be nice to get that little boost inside of the characters that do have black blades. And obviously with his fight against Mihawk, I want Zoro to show his ideology and just show his mind, since I feel like a lot of people think that Zoro is very stupid when he is stupid for the most part, but when it comes down to fighting, he isn't. Yeah, that's it for me. If you guys enjoy content like this, you know what to do. Leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, thank you for all the support, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.